Hello, everyone. This is Ron Gerber with AngelBeat, excited to host another Fireside chat. I'm speaking here with Daniel Watrous, one of the top Google Cloud customer engineers based in Texas. He was a real big hit on the AngelBeat live event circuit. So I wanted to create this digital content so we could share with you some of the expertise that was so well received by AngelBeat attendees. Maybe to start things off, I'll ask Daniel to introduce himself and maybe start with how Google's 9 business units, each of which services more than 1 billion users each, why that internal capabilities, those internal customers, are so important in the cloud services that Google delivers to its external customers.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Ron, and thanks for inviting me to talk with you today. I think it is a really interesting point of Google's story that we have been able to develop and bring to market 9 products that over 1 billion users each find valuable. So that's not only is that a lot of scale, but it talks to Google's commitment to the customer. In other words, everything we do is focused on what does the customer want, what's going to make it a joyful experience for the customer to interact with technology, and can we help them accomplish use cases and things that weren't previously possible. Now, one way that feeds into Google Cloud's story is that a lot of the products that Google Cloud brings to market, so if you're looking at Spanner, if you're looking at Bigtable, if you're looking at cloud storage, all of these technologies have been battle tested by Google on 9 products with over 1 billion users. And we have many more than 9 products, obviously, that we bring to market, but these 9 stand out: Gmail, Android, Maps, and so on, as examples of our commitment to not only scale, serving a global community, but kind of asking the question, now that we've developed this technology that can accommodate such a broad base on a global scale, how do we make that available to enterprises that want to serve that same market with the same speed and reliability?
Got it. Excellent. One of the key points that keeps coming up at AngelBeat is people think, well, Google search, Gmail, they'll work pretty darn good. That gives the individuals who attend AngelBeat a great deal of confidence. Another topic that also I hear from our end user audience is the scope, the geographic reach, and the security of Google's own fiber connectivity network. If you look at Google's telecom map, maybe 5-10 years ago, most of the transmission was done over third parties, and you had data handoffs between different carriers. I think one of the compelling things when some of your colleagues have put up maps of Google's fiber network is people are like amazed. Wow, I never realized how much Google can control and keep a closed loop system. And given the importance of wide area networks, SD-WAN, cloud communications, with this rapid growth of cloud-based services, I think that's another point maybe you could comment a little bit more detail on.
Yeah, well, and so some people might look at our investment in a global fiber network where we run our own fiber optic cables across the oceans. They might look at that and say, how could that be differentiating? But from the beginning, Google's commitment has extended far beyond a United States or even North America or North and South America. We have always approached things from a global vision, which is one of the reasons Google Translate is such a hit. And we just added 24 new languages during I/O a few days ago. So in other words, what we knew is, one, we want to be able to provide the best possible experience to users all around the world. 2, we're committed to privacy. We're committed to making sure that once a user's data hits our network, we don't have to rely on the security or facilities of any other endpoint on the internet. And so that's a really fun thing. As soon as data from any of our customers hits one of our points of presence or one of our data centers, it never leaves Google's network. And so all of the security that we apply to those networks to protect them for these 9 billion user services that we talked about applies to their traffic as well. And the other, I think, is cultural. So we look at technology not just as a means to profit or as a means to deliver some service, but as a means to impact people's lives. And so by saying we want to deploy a network that gives us more reach, it just ensures that everybody that we interact with is going to have the same experience. So this idea of making sure that we have an inclusive view of who has access to these resources, and that their experience is the same, regardless of where they are in the world.
Now that touches on a couple of interesting points. One of the things that comes up in a lot of my discussions is data locality. There's different compliance and security issues governing data. I'm sure it's a large benefit to organizations when they know, okay, I can work directly with one point of contact, know exactly where my data is, know exactly where it's stored, as you've got GDPR and other regulations now between Britain and the continent. You've got emerging regulations that even with the United States can differentiate data storage and locality guidelines even within the United States. That's a big plus. And related to that, again, is the importance of security. Maybe you could also touch on how Google goes about securing this network, be it encryption, be it using AI, and why that's so important, especially in this day and age where there's so much cyber attacks going on.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. Encryption is a really important component of having a secure posture, but it's not enough in today's global stage. Saying that I've encrypted data, and by the way, all data that lands on Google Cloud, it's encrypted in transit, it's encrypted at rest. The encryption schemes and approaches that we use allow customers to use their own keys or have keys managed by us. And the way we distribute, basically distinct encrypted packets across our infrastructure. So encryption, that's a great story. But I think from a security standpoint, there's so much more to the story. And one thing that has given us the ability to secure so many services at scale is our deep expertise in artificial intelligence and machine learning. In other words, as we look at the traffic that's coming across our networks, the protocols, the origin, the source, and so on, it's simply too much for any human to take into account. And it's too much for an algorithm on its own to accurately identify, yeah, this is legitimate traffic and this isn't. So using a combination of unsupervised learning and supervised learning, different approaches, we're able to go out and identify risks that we don't know to look for yet, as well as make sure that we're accounting for risks with known attack vectors and known vulnerabilities, for example. So that's the first part. Beyond encryption is that we use a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning to make sure that our security is at the top. The second part of security is that we want enterprises and companies, startups of any size, to find the process of looking at the data related to their company, so network traffic, application performance, and so on, to be as easy as Google search. So we want it to be as fast, as flexible, for them to be able to come in and say, what is it that I'm doing? What are these applications doing? Where's this traffic coming from? Is there anything, specific events that I want to look for? And so like last year, introducing Google Chronicle was an example of that commitment to huge amounts of data, petabyte scale data marts with sub-second query capabilities, so that you can go in and say, hey, across my entire landscape, regardless of how large or small it is, what's happening right now? What do I need to look out for?
Very impressive. I think one of the things I've also heard is that organizations don't see any performance impact. I'm just touching on some of the encryption comments. People, when they do encryption, de-encryption keys, there's some concern. Well, I know I need security and protection, but I've got so many applications where it's mission critical, time sensitive. And that's another big plus I've heard, is that, again, you've got 9 business units. Google search has to work quickly. Gmail has to work. I mean, all these things are all like we're nanoseconds and the speed of light matters. And I know Google's ability to maintain security and also performance is a big plus.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. As we look at the way we've approached cloud, we custom build all of our cloud hardware, even down to using, we have hardware root of trust with custom Google Silicon in every server in cloud, using our Titan technology. So that's a really interesting point to bring up. And then even going a step further, not only encrypting the data in transit and at rest, we now offer confidential compute, which encrypts the data in process. And our approach to hardware, it has given us the ability, our hardware is so fast. I know we don't have time to touch on benchmarking and things like that, but you really don't see a performance hit by taking advantage of the technology, the encryption and security technology. So yeah, definitely worth a deeper dive for anybody who's interested.
And again, you can always follow up with me. We'll put you in touch with Daniel. You can look at angelbeat.com. You can find Daniel on LinkedIn. We'll make sure that everyone who hears this and gets this excited as I do about these capabilities can evaluate it within your own organization. Another big thing that I was amazed about, we're all familiar with Kubernetes emerging as the de facto standard in cloud operating system containers. It was amazing that, this was the technology developed by Google first. And then instead of keeping it proprietary, Google says, okay, we're going to make this open source. And that whole mindset of publishing standards to make it very easy for other cloud providers to adopt the technology that Google developed is, at least in my view of the world, the Kubernetes is one of the best examples of that, where now, again, the other two major cloud providers now embrace the same standard created by Google. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about the philosophy of Google, because that's a very customer-centric view of offering maximum flexibility, as well as a Google approach to make sure that the broader cloud ecosystem for all organizations is as secure and as open as possible.
Yeah, I think that's great. When you look at containers are a good example, I think, of a technology that tells a lot about Google's story that a lot of people probably don't know. They're not as familiar with. So when Docker was released in 2013, that kind of brought to the mainstream this idea of containerizing workloads on Linux systems. What a lot of people don't know is that that wasn't the emergence of container technology. In fact, Google had been using containers at scale since 2006. Wow. And the technology that we have internally, which we refer to as Borg, is what we used as a pattern to create Kubernetes. So as the rest of the world economy and the world stage as far as technology said, oh, wow, containers might be a great way to isolate workloads, to get better utilization of existing hardware, to be more flexible and faster with how we deliver technology solutions. There were a lot of people competing in this space saying, hey, we have a way to orchestrate containers. We have a way to orchestrate containers. And Google, in our tradition of, for example, our publications around our distributed file system led way to a number of open source implementations. Because we publish openly in an academic way, we give people the reasoning, the thought process, and the ability to reproduce our results. And so if you look at the NoSQL databases that are based on Bigtable, look at Cassandra and HBase and so on, these are all examples of Google saying, we're going to give to the world the way we approached this problem and how we approached the solution, and let the world come back and see if they could find something. And so, whether you're looking at Cassandra, HBase, MongoDB, all of these things are manifestations of Google's contribution to the world technology stage. Containers, of course, being one. And we said, hey, you know what? We know how to do containers. We've been doing it for almost a decade now. Let's see if we can build from scratch an open source version of what has allowed us to scale to billions of users. And just as a fun anecdote, I don't have the current numbers as of today, but as of about 2 or 3 years ago, we were launching 4 billion containers every week. And so I mean, that just to put that perspective and scale, and we have grown like crazy over the last 3 years. So what that number's at right now, I don't know, but to be able to say that, yeah, we're running or launching 4 billion new containers every week gives you an idea of the scale of how frequently we're releasing changes, how we respond to spikes in traffic, and so on. And Kubernetes is a great example of how we've been able to contribute to the world and make it possible for people, whether they're still running their workloads on-prem, whether they're running them in any of the 3 major cloud hyperscalers or anywhere else, that they can have the same experience and benefit from Google's history.
That's it. And I'm sure everyone who might use some alternative cloud providers are all aware that they've all embraced Kubernetes as a de facto standard across the board, which again is a testament to the Google culture and the Google technology expertise. So as you look ahead to the future, what gets you excited? Just to conclude, very fascinating commentary about how Google's internal customer demands drive so many benefits to external users, the value of Google's proprietary data fiber network, Google's security focus, be it through AI and encryption, this culture. What are some of the main things that some of your customers are asking about for the future that's going to make Google clearly be one of the major big 3 cloud providers for as far as I can tell?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. I think anybody who's been following Google closely has seen over the last couple of years the consistent 40 to 50% per quarter growth, right? So that's pretty amazing to be able to tell that story and see that amount of growth. What I think that says about Google is a couple of things. One is our customer focus. We want our customers to succeed. So we're not out there to try to get huge contracts. We're out there to try to solve problems. And as a customer engineer, this has been one thing that's really neat about me engaging directly with customers as part of their evaluation and adoption of Google Cloud, is I can help them solve problems. I can help them understand the patterns, the technologies, and the approaches that would give them a differentiated position in the market and give them the flexibility to focus more of their resources on differentiating technologies. So that's one of the reasons for growth. Now, another is in Google Cloud is certainly the part of cloud that we've been talking about today, these services that companies use to build products and deliver them to market. But Google Workspace, which is a full productivity suite, word processor, spreadsheets, slides, for presentations and so on, including the Gmail and all of the amazing spam filtering, and then online collaboration like Google Meet, which we're using today to have this interview and record this call. These technologies are really game changing for companies. And so more and more companies are saying, wow, can I take a different approach? Can I look at how Google has approached productivity and enable my remote workforces, enable my distributed teams to collaborate more effectively wherever they are? And it helps that Google has such a ubiquitous presence in K through 12 education and in universities, because these new people that are emerging into the workforce, it's second nature to them. They come to some of these older platforms and they're like, I can't collaborate. This isn't online. This isn't real time. I want to get back to something that's more real time. So Google Workspace being part of Google Cloud, it really rounds off the story of how can startups have access to this enterprise level technology, and how can enterprises change the way they approach technology that give them cost benefits and security benefits, and of course more speed in bringing what they want to their customers.
I can tell you this, my kids in high school during the COVID remote learning, Google Classroom is basically the de facto standard, for how they learned. I mean, and that just permeates all of their mindset going forward. It's like, okay, what's the Google app or solution for this? And let me pull up Chrome and let me check out my Chromebook, etc.
Right.
Well, this is great stuff. I really appreciate your time, Daniel. If people have any questions about Google Cloud, want to see how it integrates with your current cloud providers, want to get a fresh perspective on how some of their innovative solutions can be used in your environment, do some proof of concepts. Again, you can go to angelbeat.com. You can go to #angelbeat across all the major social media platforms. We'll be glad to put you in touch with Daniel. You can also find Daniel, I'm sure, on LinkedIn, and we'll be glad to help. And again, as everyone is looking at the future, I think it's also interesting when you look at Daniel's background, you'll see that he worked for some of the world's largest technology companies, not Google or one of the other cloud providers. His previous employers needed to deploy cloud solutions, and based on that experience, he saw and evaluated Google as both a platform for his employers, as well as in going through that decision making, he says, wow, and I'm going to put a little bit of words in his mouth. He says, this platform is so cool, I need to work for them. And I've heard that from many customers. I've heard that from employees at other cloud providers. And I think that's another very telling example of how Google is able to support this growth. They need thousands of people like Daniel, and they're able to get them because of the quality of the platform. That's a major attraction for hiring the right talent. And what that means to end users is, you're going to have very skilled employees servicing you from the GCP internal perspective.
Okay. Well, hey, Ron, thanks so much for everything you do with AngelBeat. Keep up the great work. Look forward to the next time we get together.
Excellent. We'll look forward to posting this. And again, all the best. Be well. Bye-bye now.
Thanks. Bye.